So the first session this afternoon is, let me just get this thing up again. The title is Herding Projects, a CI Team's Guide to Balancing Priorities. Fantastic title. As I said earlier, it's colleagues from UCL who are with us. So I'm going to start off with Helen. So Helen Brown is Head of System Configuration and Automation at UCL, with extensive experience in HR systems and operations within HE. She's passionate about harnessing technology, particularly automation, AI, and systems integration to solve complex business challenges, and also to deliver more efficient, compliant, and user-focused services. Helen specialises in connecting people and process with technology to streamline operations and enable smarter ways of working. Welcome to Helen. Sam Harrison is a continuous improvement manager in the Service Excellence Department at UCL. With a background in organisational change and process improvement, Sam is passionate about helping teams work smarter, make informed choices, and deliver real value for students and staff. At UCL, Sam leads initiatives that build capability and continuous improvement, support data-driven decision-making, and foster a culture of collaboration and learning across professional services and beyond. Drawing on 9 years of experience in the HE sector, Sam brings a practical and people-centred approach to tackling complex challenges. And last but not least, Shane Dowle is Head of Continuous Improvement Team at UCL, where he leads work to help universities overcome operational challenges to focus on what truly matters, delivering world-class education, research and services. With over a decade of experience in change and CI across the HE sector, Shane is passionate about developing high-performing transformation teams and supporting the growth of future change leaders. He combines strategic thinking with practical delivery to help institutions operate more effectively and with purpose. So that's enough from me. Welcome to our presenters, and I will hand over to you, and hopefully you have the capacity to share on Teams. You should have that, hopefully. So over to you.
Great, thanks very much, John. Can you all hear me okay? Great, it's nothing. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, maybe wherever in the world you are. It's a pleasure for me and my colleagues to be here to join you for this international conference. We're very excited to share some work that we've done here at UCL on what is a common problem we have in change transformation in the CI world, really, which is, we have finite resources in our teams. There's always more work than there is people to do that work. And so the challenge that we've been trying to address here at UCL is how do we make sure that we're deploying our teams, our resources on the highest value work so that we can get the maximum return for our efforts. What we'll talk through in the presentation today is we'll unpack that problem a little bit to share what that looked like from the UCL perspective. We'll talk you through the workflows that we've created and the tooling that we've developed to help us manage and prioritise our work. And we'll also share with you the lessons learned and our next steps as well. And I would say we're very much in the process of evolving this. We've had it live for a few months, and we're constantly, in the spirit of continuous improvement, we're continually learning, continuously adapting our approach around how we manage this particular problem. So onto the problem. Sam, can you move to the next slide? Thank you. So here's the problem statement that we were facing at UCL, and this is, I dare say, this is familiar to many of you. Really, what this was about is we have lots of requests coming into the team for work. Those requests can be generated from pretty much anywhere in the organisation by anyone. So we get, requests for facilitation support. We get requests from those delivering frontline services for opportunities that they see for improvement. We get involved in tactical projects. We also get involved in larger programmatic pieces of work that are high priority for the organisation. And it constantly presents us with that problem. Look, we've got lots and lots of work coming in, but how do we make sure that we are saying yes to the right high value work? And how do we then say no or not yet to the pieces that we're just unable to accommodate at this point in time? The problem was we didn't really have a joined up process for scooping up those pieces of work, assessing the relative priority of those pieces of work, and then really kind of being open and transparent about how we were undertaking that. So our overall goal with this was to make sure, look, can we get to a position where we've got people on the highest value work, and that we have a transparent approach for deciding what work we do, so that we can defend our decisions and we can just be open and honest and have that conversation about how the work is getting prioritized and how us as a resource, how we're getting deployed. So move to the next slide, please, Sam. Thank you. So we started off with a fairly simple framework for doing this, and you can see the process diagram there. It's very straightforward what we did. So what we wanted to have was a mechanism, which we'll demo in a moment, through which these requests can be submitted. So those would come from the requester of the work. We need to have a way in which those requests could then be reviewed by those service owners. And the reason for having the service owner as a part of this workflow is because if some work comes up that might be, there might be an individual who's very passionate about a particular thing, but if it doesn't have the support of that service owner, then realistically, we're going to encounter blockers, we're going to encounter issues with it, and it's not really going to get very far at that point. So we wanted to have a mechanism for being able to filter out things that just wouldn't be able to get out of the blocks at that point in the process before we kind of wasted people's time with doing further reviews on them. On the assumption that a piece of work is decided to be a priority for that service, it then comes through to our shared services senior leadership team and the leadership team for the kind of the change capability that we have around that shared services. Those reviews are then those requests are then reviewed against a criteria. And then if they're approved, we then look at that against the work that we've got on at the moment to try to sequence that into our roadmap of activity. So is this something that we have the resource to be able to do now, or is it something that we have to do down the line, or is it such a priority that actually we have to park or pause something else so that we can redeploy the resource on this priority piece? And all through that process, we make sure that we're in touch with the requester so that they get the feedback of what's happening at each of the stages, so they know that their request is being actively looked at, actively reviewed, and that they'll get a decision with a reason for the decision at the end of the process. The way that we do that prioritization, oh, sorry, Sam, just go back to, thank you. The way that we do that prioritization is we've got a very straightforward assessment criteria, which we've actually evolved a little more now into a weighted prioritization matrix. But the principles are the same. When we're looking at the work coming in, what we're really trying to understand is this a strategic piece of work that's called out in our organizational strategy? Is there a compliance or legislative driver for it that means we just have to do this, because if we don't, then we could risk fines or worse? Is it going to generate any income or revenue for the university? And the kind of standard stuff, does it make things faster, better, cheaper, or does it de-risk operations? So we're really evaluating the pieces of work that come in through those lenses, and that helps us then give a scoring to the item, give it kind of a relative prioritization position, and then that helps us to make the decision about whether it's a yes right now, a no not yet, or a no. So we've built some tooling to help us with that, which we wanted to demo. So I'll hand you over to Sam now, who's going to walk through how this works within the ESM system. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Shay. I want to mute that. Can everyone hear me? All good? Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'll now take you through the solution that we've actually built to accommodate this process, which is in our enterprise service management tool known as My Services. Click onto that. So on the self-service portal, this is kind of the one-stop shop where staff and students alike at UCL will go to request any kind of service. So it seemed like the best position place to actually locate this form, especially as it kind of they rolled out at the same time, kind of in parallel, really. So if we search for PS Hub change, we will see the PS Hub change control and prioritization form. Now, it's a really simple form. And one thing to note as a bit of a caveat is that in the initial stages of this, we have limited the coverage of this to just members of the Professional Services Hub. So they're the only people who can actually raise this form. Now, the reason for that is we want to really get an accurate idea of demand before we think about scaling this outwards. So we thought limiting the coverage of the form is something really useful, especially because it's such a different direction culturally in terms of requesting changes. So we thought it's probably a smarter decision to do that rather than a big bang approach. So the foundation of this form basically is to be used to request either system updates. So it could be an update to my HR or an HR information system. It could be an update to my services. It could be requesting a form for this. It could be for a service or process improvement or a request for automation to assist you with that process improvement. It could be updating a policy. It could be requesting reporting support from our service performance and analytics team. So the building of a dashboard or Power BI solution. So any of those uses we've incorporated within the request type field here. And dependent on the type of request that you select, you'll get a different set of conditional fields that will appear. And we did a lot of hard work in configuring the fields that we wanted to appear at this stage. And luckily with the luxury of my services, we're able to change these quite easily if we find that, you know, certain fields are not kind of working at the time or not giving us the data and information that we need to make those informed choices. So for the purpose of just this demonstration for now, I have prepared one earlier, so I'll show you that when we get to it. But for now, I'll just put some dummy data in. So we have the change details up here. If it was a process improvement, we would put the title of the change. I would add the details of the proposed change. So it could be information around a problem statement, what impact that might have, or there might be specific requirements or questions that someone might need answering as part of this work. So I'll just put details for now. Maybe paraphrase it. Expected benefits of change. Now, this is something as a PS hub, we're becoming more and more aware, and we're trying to get everybody to do their lean training. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity in this case to kind of put more onus on requesters to actually attempt to justify the benefits of a change before it happens. One of the key problems we had beforehand was you get suggestions for change from a variety of sources, not necessarily backed by data or evidence. And that just put more strain on the CI resource by the time they actually take on the work before they realise, you know, it might not even be something that we want to pursue. So in this case, we've got the option to add in expected benefits of change and really expand on those. So I'll just put test for now. In the request information section, you're asked to outline the business areas that would be impacted. So it could be my ISD, it could be HR services, etc. The deadline for delivery, if you know that, that's always going to be a key determiner in terms of the prioritization when we get to that stage. The name of the approver or sponsor. So at the moment, we've got this limited to just members of the extended leadership team within the PS Hub. So because we think they're valid sources of people who'd want to give a first pass approval of any sort of change that we put through. But for presentation's sake, I'll just put myself. Any PS Hub resources that would be required to deliver the change. So obviously we might need some CI resource. We might need customer services to be involved. We might have an automation requirement. Any non-PS Hub dependencies, that could be our IT services division. And then these last two fields are around the scope of the change. So who and or what will be impacted by making the change? You know, is it a specific team? Is it all of UCL? Is it a specific system? We'll go for all of UCL. And what is the agreed output of the change that you expect to happen? So it could be, you know, a complete working new process, request form, etc. So after they submit that form, what will happen is they will get a reference number, which will be emailed to them, and the request itself will sit. Oh, it's too, you know, it pins it at the top. There we go. So the request itself will arrive in the inbox of, well, it's with Helen actually in this first instance. So This is an example of the type of ticket that comes through. Now, any sign, this is one I prepared earlier, so we'll go into a bit of the detail with this in a second, but I want to highlight the workflow here. So every time this request form is submitted, a workflow which we've designed and built will get triggered. And this workflow, the first thing it will do is it will use an automation rule to detect the approver or the sponsor that was selected in the form. So in this case, it was me, obviously. And the next thing it will do is it will fire off the first approval task automatically to that individual. Now, that individual will pick up that task in their inbox. They'll also receive an email about this. And the email will basically say, you know, please review this change. You've been asked to approve this task. All the details are in the workflow summary. If you decide to approve or reject it, just give it the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Now, the workflow summary will have all of the details of the change. Now, in this example, this is a real example that was put through, and it was for an emeritus status confirmation process. They gave us some really comprehensive information around what the problem is, what the desired output of that project would be, and any specific questions that they wanted answering as part of it. They've also made an attempt to highlight the time to process benefits that we might receive from this kind of change, and any benefits that they've anticipate in relation to user satisfaction. They've highlighted all the dependent departments, so it's a really solid foundation to begin an investigation on when this comes through. But if I was the approver or one of the extended leadership team, if I reject it, the requester would get the reason as to why that has been rejected, and they'd be asked to resubmit. But more often than not, if it's good enough, you'll give it a thumbs up. I approve this request. And once you approve the request, so if we go back to here and the workflow, it's up here. Here we go. So let's refresh this. You'll see now that this went down a stage because the approver provided their approval at this stage. And this next stage we have is the PS Hub governance stage. So what we've done with this is another task is triggered off, and this task goes to the senior leadership team within the PS Hub. Now, the beauty of this is they would set up a view, and as per the process, what we do is we have every 2 weeks on a fortnightly basis, senior leadership team will get together. They will apply the assessment criteria to the list of tasks awaiting their approval. So all of these tasks at this stage, we can be assured have had a pass from the director before submitting the form. They've had a pass from the service owner or someone within the extended leadership team. So we've already had those two kind of validation checks. So we know it's a serious item that we're dealing with. And then they can apply that tertiary assessment criteria to these tasks. So they would work through in sequence. So let's take this one. Again, review the workflow summary. They've got access to that workflow summary again. And then once they've got access to that workflow summary, they would then complete the request or approve the request. That would get shut down. And we've also got a field in there that allows us to track a JIRA reference number. Once in that example that we referenced, what was taken from that was Shane reached out to the requester, had a meeting with them and developed some briefing packs. And then work was allocated and CI resource was allocated from that. The JIRA reference was tracked, and then the remainder of that project was then tracked within JIRA. So everything's audited, everything's logged and time-stamped, and it's had that kind of chain of approvals, which is something that we just did not have the capability to do beforehand. So it's been a real improvement for us so far. And having it in a tool like My Services only gives us more options in terms of integrations and expansion of this. So yeah, it's been really useful for us so far. I will just flick back to slide. And I will pass you over to Helen Brown.
Hi, can you hear me? Hopefully it's okay. All right. So so the next steps, thanks, Sam. So the next steps and lessons learned. So as Shane and Sam have mentioned, we've been live a while. It's still a work in progress. It's still within the PS Hub, which is our shared service at the moment. The next thing we'll be looking to do, and the thing we're currently building out, is how we then broaden the use of it across other services, potentially in the longer term. But initially, how do we then integrate this into a project management tool? We use Jira at UCL, you possibly use different tools, but how do we then start to align the two processes? So we'll take it from the process that Sam has gone through. We will take that once items are approved, move them into Jira. That will then allow us to track the progress. Now, if it's a project that gets approved and gets immediately moved into sort of analysis development, it will go into Jira. We will break those items down into work packages for delivery. That will allow us to track the progress of each of those work packages and any dependencies that we have, tag items to various delivery teams, because we might need continuous improvement resource, we might need technical resource, we might need resource from elsewhere outside of our control. And then we can reprioritise those items. So inevitably what will happen is we will have a track of work, as I'm sure you're all familiar with. It will be going along, and then suddenly something will come in and we'll need to reprioritise that work as well. And it's about how we can be as flexible and then go all the way back to the original analysis we did and the benefits and the realisation to actually reuse the prioritisation on those to come back up with a new pipeline of work should we need to. The piece that we're looking to do around Jira is in the early stages, but we are looking to have that up and running in the next probably 4 weeks. And then we will be using that as a pilot for an end-to-end process so we can track everything from the initiation through to the completion on Jira. Another thing we're then looking to do is how do we then just continue to review and enhance the process. We've been using it for a while. One of those things is how we continue to embed it. So how do we get people, it's quite a large sort of shared service. How do we get people to still think about using it, raising ideas, make sure it's the one route in for work? And then send out reminders, review the process, and as we said, make sure it's just the one funnel then. And we are getting there, but there's still some things that creep around the outside and we have to bring back into that funnel. And then reviewing the process with stakeholders as well is the other thing we need to do. So we've had one review meeting, feedback on the general has been positive, but then we need to enhance it. And the first stage of that, as I said, has happened. We are then looking to evolve how we do the scoring, how we strengthen the weighting, so that when we've got the benefits coming in on the initial request, it's partly then around how do we track that and then track the benefit realisation at the end of it to make sure that the output is as was expected. If it's not, we will go back and obviously review how some of those calculations are working. We will be putting in a period of, as we would expect, period of continuous development and improvement. So as things start to come out, we will flag them in Jira for review, say 12 months on, and then that will allow us that period of continuous improvement to happen as well. So we are regularly bringing new work in, but also continually evolving what we've already got in the pipeline. And as I said before, potentially expand it beyond the use of the current users as well. So that's the other thing we will be keen to do once we've got it settled and we have it running as a pipeline of work. Lessons learned, a few things. So the calculation of the benefits and the benefit realisation. So ensuring that we have a consistent approach to that benefits calculation. We have a standard approach, but it's making sure that we're validating and realising those benefits as they come through. And then, as I said, embedding and implementing and tracking the benefits post-implementation so that we get the realisation at the end of that process. And then that period of continuous improvement to embed as well. It's already there, it's just how we evolve that as time goes on. The other lesson learned is embedding the process. So making sure we've got regular reviews with the people that are involved in the process. We're regularly tracking where the progress is. If we've got blockers in that process, do we need to do reprioritisation? Do we need to change the direction we're moving in? Because other things, as we said, inevitably come in, and you can have great plans and something will come in and completely disrupt them. Jira will also help us facilitate that. So it's how we now balance the two processes with the process of the requests versus the output and the Jira tracking at the end of it. And then just ensuring we've got a consistent use of the process. So we've got one flow of work in, one prioritisation and one benefit realisation at the end. And that is it. Does anybody have any questions for us?
Okay, thank you very much to Shane, to Sam, and to Helen. That was fascinating. Okay, we've got one already from Bob Buckwalter. Do you have actual financial data from the finance department, if there is a singular department, at your fingertips, or do you have to calculate it ad hoc on your own type thing? Let's give an example, but I'll throw that out to you.
Right, so we're just deciding who's going to answer the question. So we're getting some feedback in the room there. Okay. Yeah, so the way that we calculate the savings is in two ways, really. So one, we don't have a kind of a single sort of data sheet that we work from. We work this out based on the project. So we would look at things like what, for each step of the process, what grade are the people doing that process on, how long did it take them before we did an intervention, and then how long does it take after the intervention, and then we'd work out the difference to give us the kind of the cost of transaction. We're trying to get a little bit more sophisticated with that approach. So where we're using automation, we're factoring in the costs of actually running the automation itself. So how much does that particular solution cost to run? So that we're bearing that in mind when we're working out what the cost per transaction is. We also look at, have there been any actual like cost savings on the back of the work that we've done. So a good example of that is we're doing some work at the moment around parental leaves, and for paternities we've been able to claim back statutory money from HMRC, so that gives us a kind of a hard like financial, it's kind of a saving, but it's also a bit of revenue that we weren't maximizing previously. So those are the kinds of things we look at when we're focusing on the financial benefit of the work that we do. Does that answer the question? Got it, thanks. Yep.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? You know, particularly around the sort of cost savings, financial stuff, I guess, is, do you have a defined, agreed time period in which you calculate the financial benefits over, you know, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be?
Yeah, so that's something we're actually building out slightly more at the moment. So for us, it's that the initial benefit realisation sort of on a month-by-month, termly, quarterly basis, but it's also at what point do we realise that benefit? So what's the period of time before the full benefit is realised? So obviously it could be incremental, but depending on the scale of the piece of work, it's the benefit realisation. There's also then how long do we track that for before actually the benefit starts to deplete, because it almost becomes a business as usual piece of work, and therefore it's tracked but not necessarily at the level of benefit it was originally brought in to deliver. Because ultimately what you're aiming to do is, certainly with some of the reviews we're doing and the automation, is you know, divert the resource elsewhere to do via, you know, higher volume value pieces of work. So we are currently working on that. So yes, we will be looking at some point to see when that benefit is realised, and then how you track that longer term. But it's something we're currently working on. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I would encourage you to come back and tell us your findings on that once you've done that. That would be fascinating. I encourage people to get their questions in, or you're just going to have to listen to me answering questions. And I'm trying very hard not to sound like an accountant, but one thing that occurred to me was that resource management. So I loved your kind of the technology you're using to capture which parts of other areas of professional services you need to get involved in this. I think that's absolutely key. Is it your team that then tracks the resource management across all the projects going on? Because ultimately there'll be a lot of organisations who are stretched from a resource capacity at the moment. So therefore you obviously can't take on too much. Therefore you need to track your resources.
Hi, yeah, I can talk to that. So what we the approach that we take is we work on a termly basis at UCL. So I know what my resource envelope is for each term, and I know what work is has been given the green light for each term. And then essentially I do an exercise whereby I assign individuals or groups of individuals to those pieces of work, and we have estimates for how much of a proportion of somebody's time that particular project is going to take. And then I do a kind of a subsequent exercise where I look at that across what we call basically 2 weekly sprints. So this is our estimate going in, but actually the reality, what does somebody's allocated time look like this week? And also factor in when projects are going to, what the kind of target end date is for them as well. So then I can see over a term, okay, when does somebody have some capacity that frees up, which means we can then take on the other piece of work. So it's kind of constantly going back to the numbers, looking at how those are tracking against the plan, comparing that to the work that's coming in, and trying to kind of, trying to resolve the puzzle essentially. It's an ongoing piece of work that's never done. It's quite interesting and taxing because you're constantly, you've got lots of moving pieces in there, but that does give us a decent level of overview of the resource that we have. And also I think it does facilitate some of those conversations back in the prioritization as well, because you can have I think it makes those no, not yet conversations easier, because you can say, well, look, this is priority. We can't do it now, but we estimate we'll be able to start this piece of work, whenever it is 4 or 5 weeks down the line, because this person's time will be freed up and we'll assign them to this project. So you can give a little bit more information if you're not able to then start a piece of work immediately.
Excellent, thank you. So people are fed up with me talking, so the questions are coming in thick and fast now. We've got one from Graham Jilks. Do you know your average lead time from submission to starting, or indeed rejecting the work? He's asking, as although he recognises the need for transparency of stages and approvals, it tends to come at the expense of dynamic action, particularly where a committee has to sit in cycle for a decision.
Yeah, so we have a leadership team which sits within the PS Hub, and predominantly because it's sitting in that area at the moment, although we do feed in projects from elsewhere. We actually have a weekly catch up and a touch base on have any new items been submitted. We quickly review them. Do we think that we've got enough information to move this to the next stage, i.e. investigation or a technical development or an automation build? If we think we've got enough, we will, and we think it fits within the parameters of what it is we're trying to deliver at this time, then we will approve it and move it on. So normally they will move within a week. If there is then a question, the requester will get a response back with further questions, and then we meet regularly, and any that are still in progress get reviewed on that weekly basis. So that's how they get moved on. So at the moment, initially, yes, when we started it, we were a bit slower in responding. We've now got weekly meetings around it. If we don't need to meet, we don't meet. And then what tends to happen is if we've got something that comes in and it almost needs to just leapfrog everything because it's more urgent, then we'll just have a meeting outside of the normal and agree we just need to progress with it. And sometimes the paperwork catches up alongside it. So we know what's going on. It then obviously changes, as Shane said. He's got his resource plan. It might change his plan. It might change the plan on my side in terms of the technical development team as well. And then we do dynamically respond to those things as we go along. So
excellent, thank you. And just I should have said I'm reading out all the questions just for the benefit of the recording, because we won't be able to see. So. Nice and straightforward one from Stuart. Have you experienced it being a place for people to moan?
Not yet, no. Fortunately, we haven't experienced that yet. No, I mean, most stuff that comes through is pretty constructive. It's people asking for a process review or a system or an automation. We have the information on there. As I said, sometimes we just have to go back for more information. That slows it down a bit. But no, we've not had too much moaning on there yet. No, well, fortunately.
As Shane has highlighted, I love the word of use yet. Very much well, I'm sure it's not just a British culture, but it's very it's going to come, definitely going to come. Yeah, no, that's great, thank you. One from Joe: is the requester able to track where the request is in the workflow after submission?
Yes, the requester is able to see that. So one of the good things about my services, and it's solved one of the real bugbears we had with our former service management tool, which was a lack of visibility of a request from a customer's perspective. You know, it's really hard to see where in the process their request was. So what that led to is people getting quite angry, oftentimes sending hundreds of chaser emails, who's dealing with my issue. And that visibility is not just from the customer's perspective, but also for the agent as well. It's quite easy for them to see, because we've got tasks that fire off to different teams that all stem to one parent request. We now have that visibility, so you can see exactly what task has been assigned and who it's with. So the requester, all they need to do is update, add a note onto the main request, and that'll get routed directly to the individual who the task is assigned to. And then it's their responsibility, and the onus is on them to provide them with a bit of an update. So yeah, again, one of the main reasons why my services is a really good candidate for this particular process.
Excellent, thank you. And a question from Bill, that he's found in his role as a university administrator that senior administrators often push their projects to the top of the project list. Any way that your system would help prevent this power grab?
So at the moment, we're not experiencing too much of that, and partly because that's where we have the benefit, the matrix, the tracking, where we're putting the weighting on it as well. So we do also have some high priority projects at the moment that are tracking, at a slightly different rate to some other pieces. Yes, it's always a risk, and I think part of that is understanding what the benefit is, and the realization on that as well. So we prioritize. That's not the only reason. There is also things like risk factors. So that whole sort of matrix will have benefit versus risk versus technical debt versus build, or how long it would take to review it. So at the moment, no, we haven't experienced it. That's not to say we're not going to experience it in the future. And I think we will have to just tackle that as and when it happens. But hopefully, if we've got enough metrics and everything behind it, then we will have the evidence to be able to move with the things that will benefit the larger university as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Yeah, thank you. And just a very brief follow-up on that. When you were talking through, it seemed that leadership group have been involved. You've not just come up with this yourself. You have involved. So in a sense, they've helped set this up, and therefore you would hope that there'd be an element of respect for what they have helped to create.
Yeah, so we've got the initial sort of service excellence team that does that sort of first analysis and decides whether we go ahead or don't. Then we've got, if we can't make that decision, it would go up to the PS Hub leadership team, so the leadership team of the self-service. And therefore they will then make that decision where we need to do the reprioritisation of pieces as well. And then those people then obviously report in elsewhere as well. So that helps with being able to escalate that prioritisation if we need to make sure we are doing things in the right order.
Excellent. Well, listen, that's there's no more questions. So all that's left for me to say is thank you, the three of you, very much. I found that absolutely fascinating. Thank you for giving up your time to share with us your journey. And as I said earlier, I would love you to come back, either an international conference, or I'm sure Linda would absolutely bite your hand off to 6 months from now, 12 months from now, how you're getting on with all of the plans you have to take this forward even more. So thank you very much indeed.